Welcome to part 2 of my final presentation for Buddhism and social change. Again, my topic is hope for female sexuality freedom and growth and future of Buddhism. As I left off, I was discussing about the idea of controlling the context of someone's sexual desires and fantasies as well as conduct. I must say here that I do appreciate the idea that most Buddhist practitioners agree that there is no difference between heterosexual and homosexual perspectives and that they are not against the LGBT community. However, I did find a quote from Winton Higgins that shows a more realistic view that says, "Of course, one can meet Buddhists from traditional backgrounds that do have a problem with non-procreative sex like homosexuality, just as we run into ones that are still challenged by gender equality. But this sort of inhibition or prejudice comes from a particular ethnic culture or national tradition only. You can confidently tell anyone who expresses these sorts of attitudes that they have nothing to do with the Dhamma as such." I feel this shows a realistic view that Buddhism, as with anything in the world today, is still fighting for women's equal rights. The third topic I would like to include is the issue of lay sex, or the lay person. I was wondering if this meant that there were different levels of enlightenment or separation of the males high in the order compared to, let's say, a women just in the community of practitioners. And is it saying that women exist essentially to only reproduce, and this is why they cannot be fully enlightened? I did not find much support for this, but it also feels like a contradiction because of the separation of self from others that Buddhism seems to disagree with, as well as the fact that it is a patriarchal system, which means the more advanced members do not have sex, just the lay people do, and the most advanced members of the community are male. And then there was the confusing issue of tantric sex being something only the enlightened use, and that makes me feel that there is a hierarchy present which makes separation of self from others, as well as less of a feeling that we are all as one. Just ideas there that perhaps can be built upon for Buddhism in the future. The fourth thing that came to mind was the negative body images issue. I had an upsetting reaction, and I will just again paraphrase something I brought up in class that wasn't really further discussed. I had a somatic reaction to the statement about the body and reminding the layperson that the vessel excretes, bleeds, sweats, etc. I understand that viruses as epidemics are tragic and should be avoided. However, there is a natural cycle of the virus throughout time that ends up building tolerance to the species as a whole in the long run. Though AIDS, LPV, and herpes, for example, are awful and deadly to some, many people carry these viruses and are symptomless, or at least coping fine. Should they not be allowed to enjoy the freedom, enlightenment, connection, and warmth that comes from sexual interaction with another or self? I feel that Buddhism may hold a slight negative perspective of the body if it is seen as a machine that is dirty or viral. And lastly, the idea of having my desires all fall completely makes me feel like I would wound up becoming numb and incapable of relating to the lay person or anyone outside my community. Although there is pain in my existence, there is pleasure, happiness, and fear as well. It drives me, and it allows me to do great things and connect with so many different types of people, through music especially. Is it wrong that I crave this connection to humanity? I feel that having concepts I can understand in the past to protect people and teach them about viruses and such was important, but I feel as if spiritual teachings perhaps do not need to emphasize this any longer in society, and that there is a natural course of things, and I know that is a very different opinion than most have in this issue of things in life. And as far as going numb and having my desires drop, I am personally feeling that I don't know how good that is for society, especially as women. We function on emotion, and I think it propels us to do great things and have great strength in life. And perhaps the world may be better with more women in leadership because of this differentiation. The fifth topic I would like to discuss is hypocrisy of the enlightened. I see dualities, the enlightened person versus the lay person, and the hierarchy equals that it has a patriarchal structure and therefore not all equal to the self, the one unified self. When oppression is present, that means there are many individuals present, not just one self. The ego can be a tricky subject, and I feel that Buddhism seems to tend to want people to go towards the concept of not having that more present, but their own structure within is kind of hypocritical of this. For example, the monastic guidelines say that there is no sex for monks with a human or anything, no talking about sex, and also no conversations at night with women. I had very varied reactions to this. With no talking about sex, I feel that suppressing these desires and being dishonest with what may come up for someone is somewhat contradicting to the idea of having an honest and open heart about things and being fully understanding and accepting of the human condition. As far as no conversations at night with women, this feels very degrading. I don't understand why it matters if during the day and evening, and I feel like this is an extremely old-fashioned traditional way of looking at things that would definitely need to be improved for the women to feel more equal in Buddhism. I went and checked out the Zen porn blog that you referenced in our class, and I found this quote that I found interesting. Yet another possibility might be to use deceptions of the human body in art as a skillful means of helping the viewer transcend all dualities, including the difference between the sacred and the profane, and incorporate human sexuality into transcendental art, such as in Zen Crow's brilliant Man Connected to Nature. The difference between the sacred and profane. I wanted to know who decides this, which is what, and did Buddha establish perhaps these differences, and I am just naive. I feel that this again is a duality, and I have a lot of confusion around these concepts for Eastern traditions since I do not know much about them. I thought this site was very interesting, and I am still undecided of how I feel about Zen porn. Another quote I found under this topic, which kind of leads to a more serious discussion, was by Kuang Kayu again in his essay, and he said, "The patriarchy of Thai Buddhism also contributes to prostitution. The number of prostitutes in Thailand is almost equal to the number of monks," and I felt that this was very interesting, and I feel that it shows a balance of both needed in society, and wonder, is there an ideal in Buddhist culture to have everyone eventually be monks or Buddhists practicing without prostitution, or is there an acceptance of all roles in society? And I leave that up to other people to decide what they feel is right or not. Not being Buddhist myself, I can only say that I like to live a life that allows others to do what they need to have their needs met, and hope that they do it the safest they can. So I can't really answer yes or no in a general context on this issue. And now I will end part 2 and go on to part 3 of my final presentation.